Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Aging and Spirituality, where we talk about how we can all live a more fulfilling life past 60. I'm your host, Chris Jensen, and this is,
Kathy Lee Taylor, nice to see everybody.
yeah, we're so glad you're with us. So I ask you, do you know that humbleness can foster confidence and keep you from making big and small mistakes?
Never thought of it that way.
Yeah, nobody does. People always
No.
think the opposite. C.S. Lewis said, humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking about yourself less.
That's a great quote.
It is, it's awesome. It's the truth.
Yeah.
As we age, we gain the gift of perspective, and we've lived through enough to know that real strength doesn't come from needing to prove ourselves. It comes from knowing ourselves, and that's where humility comes in. But there are always some areas that we aren't humble and it hurts us. Real humility is thinking about yourself clearly. It's the quiet wisdom that says, I don't know everything, it's okay. It allows room for learning, growing, and connecting. Because if you think about that, if you think you know everything, you can't learn. It's a blockage to learning. And that's the kind of strength. It doesn't shout, but it's steady and it's unshakable. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
tortoise and the hare.
Mm-hmm.
And the confidence grows from it. Like when we're humble, we're not pretending to be something we're not. We stand on solid ground because we're not afraid to say, I was wrong, or I still have more to learn. That kind of honesty builds trust with others and within ourselves. And over time, it becomes a deep, calm confidence.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
remember when I was very early at the yoga center and I was involved in a project, and something happened that was a big mistake. And everybody was doing this, pointing at each other. And so I,
So you did it. I did it.
so I said to Ramakrishnananda, I said, this was my fault. And he didn't say anything then, but a few months later, he told me, because you were willing to admit that you made a mistake and wanted to learn, he said, Shakti has moved. He said, you've grown tremendously.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what it takes to become a good teacher. Like I've noticed that even online, when people are reading your posts and trying to connect with you, they are looking for your responses. Like, is this person arrogant? Is this person writing like a humble person? Like they're
Yeah,
not going to learn from somebody who is not. You know,
exactly.
it's it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
in your words. It's in your words. It's in your being.
Yeah. But think about the most grounded, confident people you've known. They're not the loudest. They don't brag. They listen more than they speak.
Hmm.
That's the confidence of humility. It's not flashy. It's not sexy, but it's real. It's real. And why does it matter now? Okay. At this stage in life, humility builds true confidence that can be a gateway to freedom. We don't have to pretend or compete. We can lead with curiosity instead of ego. And when we do, we give others permission to do the same. When we're not putting our ego out and trying to be the person that knows or has to be the doer, it gives other people permission to make mistakes and to learn.
Right.
So many times, ego, arrogance, which some people mistake as confidence, causes us to make big mistakes. I share something that just happened this week. There's this wonderful person that runs this online video workout class. She's been doing it for over 5 years, and she's very fit. She's our age, but she goes to fitness retreats. She really works out, and she loves doing this. She loves doing it for everybody. So she's in great shape. And so we're doing this step and tone video. And now when I was doing it, I thought, this step, it's easy to slide off it. This is coming to my mind because especially when you turn it sideways and you step over back and forth. And in a
What do
step,
you mean slide off it? What's that?
well, to get if you're stepping up and down and over the
Oh,
side,
on a box or something?
yeah, a step.
Oh, okay. Oh,
It's
okay, I
actually
got
a step, for step
you.
workouts. And so I was thinking about that, and there were some things I decided I just wasn't going to do on the step. I just did it, on the floor. And after a bit, when I noticed in the video on the Zoom, I said, huh, this is odd. All of a sudden I didn't see her. And then all of a sudden I see her, she's sitting down, which she never does. She does what we do. She has weights on doing it. And so
Hmm.
she's sitting there doing the arm workout. So after the class, she said to us, she said, I don't know if you saw this, but I slipped and took a nosedive off this.
Oh no,
Yeah.
just as you were thinking about it.
Yeah.
Wow.
But what happened was she said her hip really hurt. Well, it turns out she broke her hip.
What?
Yeah, that was Wednesday, and yesterday she had hip replacement surgery.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I
That's
was thinking, when I was thinking about humility, she's so fit and she's so into this that, you know, I know
she
I
didn't
was super
know.
careful. She wasn't, it was that lack of the humility. It was that like, I do this, I'm doing it with extra weights and this and that. And that it just lets things like that happen, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, I mean, I'm sure we all have stories like that, I think,
sure.
not in that particular area.
Yeah, that's crazy. I can't believe she felt like that. But when
Yeah,
you're up around our age, a fall it's not like taking a fall when you're 30 or 40 or whatever.
yeah, right.
You
And,
can
and she must, if
easily,
she slid off the steps, she must have gone down really hard, and probably hit
yeah.
her hip right on it or on
You
something.
kept going, finished the class, and you didn't even know.
She was sitting down after that part of it, we were doing these, arm things. She was sitting down doing the weight.
Just
Yeah.
transitioned into arms. Holy
Yeah,
moly.
and after the class, she said, I don't know, I hurt my hip. I don't know, we're going to see
Yeah.
what's going on with it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and that evening she sent us the note saying, well, I guess and this is her note says, we're not going to do classes for a while because I've got to have this hip replacement tomorrow. She said, I'll let you know when I'm back. I mean,
Gosh.
yeah,
Oh my
but
gosh.
we all do stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did something just last week. It was Monday, and I was watching my 3-year-old grandson, and we didn't have the car seat. Tim had it in his car, and he accidentally took off and went to work. So it was a very hot day. They only live a mile from the beach, so I put him in the stroller and we walked down to the beach. Well, coming back from there, back up to their house, going is no problem. It's downhill. Coming back, it's a very steep, I mean, a steep hill. So it's
Mm.
boiling hot. I'm pushing 35-pound Bo in the 25-pound stroller with another 5 pounds of paraphernalia we brought up this hill in the heat. And, and I get back and I'm trying to do everything. And I thought, that's just crazy. I, sh-
Too much.
I
Yeah.
should, yeah, that's that lack of humility. I should
Yeah.
know my limitation there. We
Mhm.
didn't have to go to the beach.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
maybe last year when he weighed a lot less, it was fine. But, that's a lot of weight to push up
Yeah.
that steep hill, and it
Well,
was hot. And I've thought about that. And after the next day, when the person who did the video class, after she fell, I thought, I was the same thing I was doing. That lack of, that's what made me think about sharing this, because it's that lack of humility, that lack of,
yes.
oh, I have to be able to do this.
I'm guilty of that on so many levels just because being arrogant. I can do anything, like I've let go a lot of that. I know I say that a lot about myself, but and I have fixed a lot of that, but still my first instinct is to pop in and save the day. Oh, I can lift that. I
Right.
can fix that. I can do that for you. I
Yeah.
like to say, my roomie said the other day when she needed a garage door, and I said, "We'll just go over to Home Depot and get that sucker. We'll put it up." And then I'm thinking, what are you talking about? You need a truck.
Same.
You need to know how to hang a door. You're such a dork. But my first reaction is always, I can do that. I
Yeah.
can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And
Uh,
and that's how we get into trouble.
yeah.
How we make mistakes, and how
Hurt
much easier it
ourselves.
is to admit that we don't have the ability and we need to learn something or do something different. And
That's for
sometimes
sure.
it's big mistakes. There's a story, this woman who, uh, she was doing care for her father who was in his 80s, and he'd been fiercely independent. And, you know, and things were getting harder for her. It's like my daughter, but this is not her. This is kind of a similar story though. And he
Mhm.
was forgetting his pills, missing meals, getting confused. And she kept saying, everyone kept saying to her, he really needs help. We should get a nurse in, maybe even think about memory care. But she resisted. She'd taken care of him before, and she was convinced that she knew what to do. And she said, he
Mhm.
just needs more structure. I know what's best for him. I don't need a doctor to tell me what I already know. And
Didn't want to go.
yeah, there was pride in her voice. It came from love, and fear, but still, from not want she didn't want to face that maybe her father was changing in ways she couldn't handle.
Sure.
So weeks passed, and then one day he wandered outside in the morning, got lost, and it took 2 hours,
Oh, crap.
and a neighbor's phone call to find him. That was
What?
that was
Yeah,
the
it was
wake-up
a
call.
wake-up call. Oh my gosh.
After that, she let humility in. She got help for both her and her dad, and they're both better.
Yeah,
That's why humbleness, it frees us
it
from these
does.
things, these limitations we put on ourselves, and it gives us confidence. Well, some people see it as opposites. True humility, which involves acknowledging our limitations, being open to learning, builds a strong foundation for real confidence. It keeps us learning from our mistakes, adapting to new situations. We can appreciate our own strengths without needing to overcompensate,
Yeah,
which is what we all do.
yes, we do.
And uh, here's why it's so important. It reduces the fear of failure. A humble person is more likely to see failure as a learning opportunity rather than a personal failing, which
Hmm.
reduces the fear of taking risks and trying new things, thus fostering confidence. I know someone at our yoga center many years ago where she had been given a position of a lot of responsibility and she was very excited about it. She did absolutely nothing because she was afraid of failing. And Ramakrishna asked me about this. He said, why isn't she doing anything? And I said, well, she's afraid of failing. And he said, well, can you think of a better way to fail?
And not do it.
Yeah, that's what happens too when people are afraid of failing, they get frozen.
Yeah,
Very common. And that's
yeah.
why, you know, being willing to fail, being willing to make a mistake and learn from it, that humility takes us really far.
Mm.
And when humility encourages continuous learning, it builds stronger relationships. When you're willing to admit you're not perfect, people appreciate it because nobody's perfect.
Yeah. Willing to admit you need help too. Think of it that way. Like
Yeah,
that's what I really need to learn is how to admit when I need help on a project or like right now, I'd like to be doing a lot more than I can do, but I've only got so many hours in the day and I just get exhausted. I was feeling like so weary today, like I'm never gonna get all this done, I have so many
yeah,
goals. I get up every day and I overwhelm myself. And I actually ended up talking to somebody I'd met at a networking group, and she turned out to be somebody who hires people out of the Philippines. And I was like, do you have anybody that does this and this and this and this? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, okay, we got to talk, you
yes,
know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it. It
Right,
that's
exactly.
that's it right there. That's it right there. So, and it also allows for a more stable sense of self and authentic self-expression because you're being genuine. You're being
Yeah.
confident in your own skin rather than constantly trying to project a certain image. And
That's how I've always thought about humility, like standing in your own truth, right? You're
yeah,
not being arrogant, but you are standing in your own truth, but you're also making room for other people to do so as well.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And confident humility is not an oxymoron, but rather a combination of self-awareness, openness to learning, a realistic assessment of your capabilities, and it allows growth and groundedness. And when pride gets in the way, what do? We stop listening, right? Because we assume we know, we don't listen. You talk to people and you can tell they're not even listening, they're answering you before you say what you're.
Their eyes are glossing over, they're
Yeah.
looking in another direction.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I think they
All
know.
the time.
And I've done this. I think we've all done this. I mean, at some point, we think we know something. We
Yeah.
overestimate ourselves. Confidence is good, but not without humility. It can turn into overconfidence. We can take on things we're not ready for, skip the preparation, ignore the warning signs. You've got this even when we don't.
Yeah.
To know that, okay, I may need to practice, I may need to work a little bit more, on this before I jump out there. We resist change because pride clings to the familiar. Humility says, maybe there's a better way, you know.
Yeah.
Without openness, we get stuck in our own way. And, stubbornness breaks us. And, I look at it, I know someone who was very stubborn and very resistant to change. And that person is suffering with dementia now. And I don't know if I'm not saying that's the reason,
Connected. Yeah.
but, it's seems like a connection. We damage relationships when we have a lot of pride, and we
Yeah.
don't recover from mistakes because we all make mistakes, but if you can't admit you made one, you're
Yeah.
never, and you get defensive, you're never going to grow.
I think one of the ones that I relate to a lot is um, not making everything about me,
Mhm.
because I'm the person that want to jump and fix something. So if I make it about me, I can fix it. If I make your problem about me, I can jump in and
Yeah.
fix it. That's been like a pattern that I've had in my life. I'm definitely giving that up. I don't consciously do it now. I
Yeah.
can't say I don't slip into it every once in a while. But yeah, where you're if you're being humble in that regard, you're going to leave space for other people to do their thing. You're going to listen more, you're going to be present more for them.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
you don't have to try to fix everything and control everything. So it in that way it does it for me it's very freeing because I always felt like I had to be the one to jump in and fix everything. So that's an interesting way to look at humility.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. It really makes a difference. And
Yeah.
uh, there's something we do in yoga that's very well. First thing you want to do is catch yourself. Be aware of thinking that you know everything about a situation and remind yourself it's okay to make mistakes. And if you're in a place where you're feeling, I have to do this, I know this, maybe you stop for that minute. And in this thing we do, we put your awareness at the base of the spine and you inhale and you bring this white light above your head and you exhale and you let the light pour down over your head, your brain, and your body. And what that does is just allows everything to calm down enough. You do that 4 or 5 times. It'll allow everything to calm down enough to maybe you'll see the situation more accurately.
Hmm, interesting. I gotta remember that one. I like that.
Hmm. Yeah. In the long run, humility doesn't make us smaller. It keeps us open, adaptable, teachable. And that's what helps us grow stronger, especially if you've had a problem.
It helps us
So,
grow at all. If you're not open and receiving, you're not growing at all.
right, you're stuck. You're stuck.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
maybe today, think about a moment when humility actually gave you confidence, not less. Time when admitting you didn't know something opened a door,
Yeah.
deepened a relationship, or made you feel more a sense of self. That's the kind of
Allowed me from,
power that only grows with time.
yeah, allowed me, in my case, allowed me to learn to let go. Let go. Don't try to control everything.
Yeah,
You,
yeah, because
you
you can't.
you can't, and you learn another skill of being able to hold space for other people to fix their own stuff. You just you don't have to always be doing it.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's a great lesson.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to share because I was thinking about it a lot this week with these events that happened, and I thought it's so important. And especially at our age. I mean,
Mhm.
it can open doors for us rather than
100%.
us feeling like, oh, I'm this age, so I should know everything. I'm this wise older person.
Does anybody really get to that? Because I'm like exactly the opposite. The older I get, the less I know, that's for sure.
There's some people who are, I don't know. You know, before my grandson was born, my daughter had us take the grandparents class, so we learned how to be grandparents class. It was an online class.
Seriously, I didn't know that. I
Yes.
didn't know that. Oh my God, what did you learn?
Well, it was hilarious because most of the people on there were like old hippies like us. And so we were cracking up at some of the stuff. And basically, at the end of the class, they said, look, if you learn, they taught us how to swaddle. And so they said, if you've learned nothing from this class, learn this. Don't give advice.
That's the whole thing they wanted to
Yeah.
say to you.
This is really what we want to tell you as grandparents. Don't give advice. It won't be appreciated, even if it's really good advice.
Oh my God. And your kids paid so you can hear that.
Yeah, yeah,
Make sure my mother hears that. That's
yeah.
funny.
But
Oh my God,
they
that's
didn't know what it
hysterical.
said. Z and Tim didn't know what it said. They just knew it was the grandparenting class.
Oh,
So
that's crack up. I didn't know that. That's funny.
yeah, yeah, and but everybody just cracked up at the end when they said that.
Don't give your kids any advice.
Nice.
That's going to be a hard one.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
I don't. Just a few things I've learned when she asks, I'll give her input. But
Well, this is what I did. That's what I've learned to do.
mm,
Somebody was having trouble with one of their relationships, and I thought, well, I know that answer, but I'm not going to give it. All I'm going to do is say, when I was doing this, it was kind of a similar situation, but this is how I handled it, and this is what ended up happening. So who knows?
yeah, I actually have done something like that. Like, when we're talking about something, I'll say, well, when you were little, this is what I did, and this is what worked, and this is what didn't
Yeah,
work.
yeah, yeah.
And she'll say, "Oh, that's like something I read." So that if she's read about it or heard about it,
It works. Yeah.
yeah, it's valid.
The lawyer. We
Yeah.
love you. You're the best. All right.
So I hope this is helpful for you, and I hope it opens doors for you because we all, like I was noticing this week, we all have areas where we have that lack of humility. And if we can just, relax and step back and open that door, there's a lot more for us. There's a lot more for us in life. A lot
A
more
lot more freedom, folks.
freedom,
Joy,
fulfillment. Yes.
joy. Grandmas need freedom.
We all need freedom. We
We all
all need freedom, no matter what age we are.
need-
So I hope
Thank
this
you.
is helpful. Come visit us on YouTube, like us, subscribe, and just, interact with us. Send us your questions because we want to know. We'll talk about whatever you ask. So
That's for sure.
have a great day.
See you next week.
Bye.